one software from design to construction or even further can be a solution, or is it right to have multiple softwares now on the market? We use even more add-ons, and where's the limit? When it comes to a small firm, there is disadvantage because the price is the same. And also, I was asking the question, it's a little bit more on Autodesk part, because that's what I am using mostly. That basic things like a batch print, when you can print a PDF and DWG at the same time, is not available. Only if you purchase an extra add-on like RVP tool and such. So it's it's a little bit still. I should have been more clear about my thesis, but at the moment it's still something I try to put together. So let's start with the first question. That is like, why do we need always to work around? Or what it means for you? Perhaps it is your interpretation of workaround is different than the others I talk to. Because I think we all have different approach. Some way, and then if you can give me an example, that would be really, really good.
Okay, so why we need workaround? It's basically, in my opinion, is that first of all, software cannot support in general everything what we can imagine and what architects eager to do it. Most of case, if we just design a factory building or box plant planning, you would pretty much no need any workaround. But architects seems to describe or express their idea from the sketch, and the sketch is like somehow the abstract element, and the abstract element that we want to somehow visualize in computer CAD software or BIM software is of course limiting because it doesn't have the same feeling, and which I mean not graphically only, but the thoughts from the architects or designers is more complex than just what computer draw from point A to B and draw the vector lines. And this is just one case. So the workaround is always happening because of the limitation of computer software. It doesn't comply exactly what the architects wants to explain some point, and the computer is very the precision, because of the precision is not really becomes not really abstract. You can compare sometimes the sketch from architects. When you trace it over in CAD software, it's completely different feeling. And the idea is also different. From the sketch, I think the idea is more or less like a bottom up, like a spreading, like branch out from the sketch. But when you use computer software, it's more or less top down. Or I know you can programming or you can use generative design tools, but there's still limit in terms of parameters, which the architects or designers usually don't think about, or you cannot put every parameter for computer software that So I think this is the major issue why we need workaround. And secondly, the complex situation that we have to document, still the standalone softwares are limiting because they are developed by software engineers, not by architect or designers. Most of case the IT computer scientists, they are developing the tools, and they cannot support all this complex from their backend artwork, So I think that's why, and the designers and architects, that's ego. this egoism that they want to describe or explain something that they wish to do, or trying to make a differentiation between the other competitors, and always brings us as a nature this workaround, even though it's not necessary sometimes.
I see.
If you work in, like, let's say, auto industry, I have a industrial design background, and if you work in the auto industry as an engineer, it's very straightforward because all the components is pretty much, it's restricted. But when you work as a car designer or vehicle designer, so when it comes to designer, the computer software is limiting, so they still using mud, like this, the model, the handcraft model, to come up with the idea, and also taping sketch, because the the limitation of the skill set in computer. You cannot always make workaround for the surface of car body. So I think it depends on what we are doing. But when I see most of case in engineering office, they don't do much workaround, I guess.
Yeah. I think they have to be very precise, and that's why they are not allowed to do tricks, right?
Yeah. Because workaround means at the end of the day it's a trick. It shouldn't be happening.
And that means less reality, right?
Yes, right. But we architects trying to express our idea by doing the workaround. I think that's why it's always happening. It's a nature from the university time to practice time, I think.
Yeah, but at the end, when we do something which is limited by a software, and then that design, some says it is redrawn. When it comes to a building, it's redrawn during the whole process of the until the implementation is happening, perhaps even 6 times or 8 times. I think they averaged at least 4 times. When it is a complicated building, perhaps they do it more often, or more times, not more often. But then it becomes perhaps different from the initial design, because it is limited not just by the software, but also the manufacturing.
Because of all these factors.
It differs from the original idea.
It's so when you look at all the master architects or like star architects, whoever, principal of your organization or whoever, they never draw in computer, I guess. Mostly it's a sketch, or very abstract sketch, concept or model, like mud model that just squeeze it and then ask us to rationalize their idea. But while we are rationalizing the idea and concept, we need to look at the specification, products, and regulations, and etc. and etc. So I think while we are doing this, we still have to do somehow workaround for them to be realized. So workaround some point is good thing, I think, better than nothing, because I always believe that version 1 is better than version 0, and if you don't work around, you cannot even maybe document it. So this case of workaround, the most case I see only in documentation stage, because in design phase, with the computer software, you can still sketch it as close to hand sketches. You can make your abstract model. But when we are going to design development phase or later phase, it becomes a little bit difficult. So that workaround is always happening, I think.
Yeah, that's actually true. Do you have perhaps an example you can share,
like
where the workaround was not happening because it was so limited, or it was challenging, and at the end it might worked even in later stages?
So where example where workaround is not happening?
if you have one. So
Okay.
you couldn't manage the workaround.
Mm.
Let's say, okay. Previously, I had an example
Mm.
from Foster's.
Mm.
They had the Mexican airport
Yeah.
made, or it had to be delivered in Revit,
Mm-hmm.
and they ran a Grasshopper script
Mm-hmm.
which made the structure for this glass
Mm-hmm.
roof,
Mm-hmm.
because the layout was so complex.
Mm.
It had to be done by a programmer,
Yeah.
and then these lines were picked in Bentley software
Mm-hmm.
to become, I don't know, I think he mentioned uh, was 1.5 kilometer per 800-meter
Mm.
stretch, the roof.
Mm.
So the structure was very complicated,
Yeah.
and then they were able to make the pipes there.
Mm.
And at the end of the day, they couldn't document it in Revit, so they had to change the entire ICT agreement
Yeah.
because it was not possible. So the workaround at the end did not work, because they were able to place that, of
Mm.
course, as a geometry into the model, but they were not able to document it. The
Mm.
size of the pipes, the number, so all these parameters were
Mm.
missing,
Mm.
and it was easier just to just do it in Bentley, and they delivered that separately.
Mm. Yeah, it's a it's in this case it's documentation issue, and Revit is, as you know, it's not perfect software for infrastructure project. When it comes
Mm.
to, airport, I would consider it as a almost like infrastructure project. I don't really want to talk about much about software, but the Revit is limiting. It's okay for software for building project, but again, when it's a big complex like factory plan or infrastructure plan, then Revit is really limiting because of the performance. The engine is almost 20 years old, and they never rescript or rebuild the engine. For example, Rhino, when Rhino 6 came, they completely re, re, they rebuilt it all the system to match the Mac. So it supports quad core system, but Revit is not. So I hate Revit, but at the same time, because of the it's market dominant. Even though it's bad software, we still have to use it. But on the other hand, Bentley is different. Bentley is start from the most of case used for infrastructure project, tunnels and bridges and road system in since 1970s. All the factory plan for automobile industry, they adopt Bentley system because the performance, and it's more or less CAD system rather than BIM. But the Bentley is also supporting BIM these days because of the demands. Of course, the core engine is much faster. They also use for aerospace design, and they have a lot more different package. So it totally makes sense for infrastructure project using Bentley. There is no question for me. The Revit is just simply bad software to uh, document the infrastructure project, I must say. And there's a misunderstanding between like people that BIM is Revit, but actually it doesn't have to be Revit. You can use all kind of CAD package, and you just need to coordinate them well as a coordination model. I mean, coordination model means it can be in Navisworks model, it can be Solibri model, can be IFC
Yeah.
packaged model in cloud server. Um, yeah, so in this case, I can see why the Fosters has to give up their contract with Revit, and the only reason why most of clients or governmental level they demands Revit model is because um, the maintenance or looking for the next phase, or while they're operating, it's easier to find people who can use Revit than Bentley software at the moment.
Mhm.
So but it doesn't mean that the software is good. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It has very, very basic features when
Yes.
actually you start working with it, and then you reach a certain level of user
Yeah.
experience, and then you start seeing the limitations more and more.
Yeah. So when software is not good enough, then you create more workaround. That's what happened most of case. People using Revit, they keep doing
Yes.
workaround. But it's just because software is not perfect. If software is good
Hmm.
enough already, then you don't never need workaround.
Yes, 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 yes. And then basically that means that we cannot really limit the amount of softwares used in a construction
Yeah,
industry,
it's
because um, let's be honest, I mean, there are many definitions of BIM, but I think once I heard someone said that BIM should be working with the software you are the best at. Meanwhile, uh, you are achieving what you want
mm,
at the end, the
mm,
building, because that's the goal. And it shouldn't matter what software you're good at.
mm,
Um, you should be able to do what the project demands. So yes, if it needs multiple 10 different softwares and scripts and whatever to be designed and then documented, then it shouldn't matter,
mm-hmm.
because mostly all that even Rhino can have uh, whatever parameters you want now.
Mm-hmm.
So you can pick the elements and then have that
Yes, right. So
information
right.
in it. And well, of course, there's another question how the IFC model is looking from
Mm-hmm.
Rhino information wise, but yeah,
Yeah, that's
it
the idea of open beam, right? So we have like
yeah.
our industry is really segmented. If you look at the reality, there is more than 50 different specialists or subcontractors working, and each manufacturer even using their own different solution for their fabrication. And all of this requires different format, different type. Um, if you think about energy analysis or building surveyors, or they all use different technique and solutions. It's impossible for us to use only one software. um, but there should be structured information, like the structural data, like this information, which need to be standardized by global level. That's the IFC format, right? So as you mentioned,
Yeah.
Rhino can provide attributes, the precise geometry with the 2D documentation, which is all fine. But Rhino also can export IFC as well. That you can use like third-party plugin. Again, it's plugin, but it's inevitable because that's the market. People looking at the gap to make money, and when they see the gap, then they develop something, and this is natural. And if you look at all the IT companies history, none of them is over 30 years. Okay, Bentley is different, but most of case they started just 20 years ago or maximum 30 years ago. So within
Hmm.
this short period of time, of course, we cannot develop every single requirement. So that's why I think the plugins are happening. And yeah, the IFC is the good idea and concept, but it's not perfect because of the geometrical precision. Currently, the IFC4 is developed, and many softwares are now certified to import and export IFC4, because IFC4 supports the boundary representation geometry, which is good. So we can actually use BREP, so for the nerve surface to be exported in IFC format, but it's still like, let's say, 5 or 6 years behind of what native format can do. I guess in the
Hmm.
future, like next 5 years, there will be big changes because IFC 5 is now supporting bridges and tunnels and all this infrastructure, precast elements, and etc. So it's just we just need more time. The industry was a little bit sleeping. Never really thought about digitalization. I like more digitalization is correct word than BIM because BIM is limiting only for the building project. But actually, the infrastructure they need more information than building, to be honest. And it's really a big tema these days. So yeah, software, many software. You ask me, software used only one software that we can use. It's it was possible in the past because you just need to submit 2D drawings. So the 2D drawing means just basically drafting. You could hire 100 people to draft for you in drafting board, and you just need to submit these simple documents. But these days, the council requirements or the the requirements are much more complex, and for that, all the IT companies are not 100% ready. So there is always specialized software, and yeah, for example, if you think about facade, the as I said, ordinary buildings are fine because we're just gonna use products. But when it comes to complex facade, then you need to fabricate like this custom fabrication. Then all the mullions, glasses, and sealant and everything, the detail parts need to be customized. And for that, you need special software because you just cannot use only. Um, I don't know. You could use Rhino for sure and Grasshopper and some script, but still this Rhino and Grasshopper script is not as precise. It's not fine for fabrication. You know that. So there is certain fabrication softwares, for example, Athena. I don't know if you heard about it. That
No, actually.
yeah. So facade, for example, that rolling the profile and produce the actual manufacturing file. This because that's what manufacturers need, and of course, planning company or engineers cannot provide it. So if you look at all the laminated timber, you can make a bounding box of the timber, but the actual manufacturers need really precise metal connections and milling plan, and none of the CAD software supports this. We can give them coordinates, but it's never works like that. So I think it's impossible in our industry to have only one software, that's for sure. But we need to be more structured, and in the future, even manufacturer can provide IFC model rather than just CAD file, that we can really use good information with good geometry. That will be, I think, really exciting moment in the future, I think.
Okay. And that also means that all these plugins and add-ons, they are actually naturally occurring because that's the evolution of this technology, basically.
Yeah, right. Because if you think about the software developers in each software company, the core team is actually only two to five people, because they don't need more. When it's more than five developers, then the project gets slow and you cannot catch up. So, but of course, these people have their own roadmap to develop what's missing part from them, and yeah, that's why always third-party plugin companies looking at the market, because they are not hired in that specific company, but they can be a partner with them,
But it's again a question: why these large companies, let's say Graphisoft or Autodesk, or why don't they develop these themselves and include it in a software? Wouldn't be better? So that makes them perhaps stand out a little bit. Or they already have the monopoly situation on the market and they just don't care.
This is the modern the current licensing problem that they offer, because they have pressure to prepare every years of new updates, and since they offer subscription package for all the clients, they have pressure to update everything. But that update doesn't mean that it's good update. They just add something that we never needed, but still they have to set it, right? And
Yeah.
it's really funny in reality, if you think about the most of company, they even doesn't matter big or small, they struggle to find the people, the person, basically, because at the end of the day, human resource is the core thing in our industry. It doesn't matter you're using good tool or not, the human resource. And the software company is exactly same. If you count Autodesk as a big company, but among all of them, who could actually know the core part of each software, 3ds Max or right, like I don't know, like Maya and Revit and whatever. It's just maybe one. So
Yeah.
they struggle because they bought the software and the original developers left, and they cannot find someone who can really develop it in short time. Yeah, it's impossible for them. So the Revit 20 years never developed really far. Used Revit since 2007. I feel 2007 version maybe even better than now because the performance is faster. You don't have much more function, but it's just gives you exact tool you need. So it's much faster. And at that time, it's Revit architecture, Revit structure, Revit MEP. So you never need complex coordination system. So it works really better for in terms of printing PDF or batch print and etc. I don't know what Autodesk made it, even it becomes worse. So um, that's their problem, I guess. But on the other hand, McNeil, Rhino, they are very quiet, small company comparison to Autodesk or Graphisoft. But they don't even have pressure to not launch their next version by next year. They don't know even by themselves because it's more or less built up by community needs, and they really listen and trying to make it better. I think that's why Rhino is always kind of Swiss knife in between all these kind of software. It's really good price also, never expensive, and of course because of that more users are involved. So I think this is like really good um, the attitude of software companies. But you know it's when you have more money and maybe you want more money and the Graphisoft or I don't know, Autodesk, they want to make more money, so they put maybe 60% of their revenue to the marketing and
Yeah.
event than actual development.
Yeah. Or giving free licenses for students
Mm,
and such.
yeah.
I don't know if that costs them anything or not.
Mm,
But yeah, I see. What do you have any opinion on open source
mm.
uh, availability? Would that change a little bit of the industry if someone would provide, uh, the opportunity to develop your project using open sources?
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, this is already happening in many cases. Not specifically for building industry, but game industry and the more like graphic industry. They use a lot of open source, which is really good because open source means actually they are funded by many big company anyway. So they also develop very good software, as you know, like Blender, or there are many open source like that you can use. Um, this is the definitely one direction, but in building industry, it's a bit tricky because open source, in terms of maybe modeling and this, it's fine, but because of the contractual issue that company administrator they want to be sure their data management, and because we're dealing with big data and they want to be ensure always keep their business going, so they prefer maybe to buy software package. And on the because open source, most of them you don't, when you look at the warranty, there's nothing warranted by any mistake or whatever. It's all take your own risk. And on the other hand, when it comes to open source, it's difficult to find people who can use it. Again, it's human resource problem, and because the market doesn't demand, or like market doesn't provide good, let's say, salary for open source people. So there are a lot of students, they're not investing their time for the open source unless they want to do their self business. So most of students, it's very pity, but they run software where they give more opportunity in the future. So that's what happened while Autodesk looking at the marketing strategy to provide educational version for free, because the more skills from student time you have, then that's actually what market needs. Then of course, as a employer, when you have interview and they all demand, oh, I can use this software, then they have to buy that software. That's the reality.
Yeah. So basically, the universities. I mean, here in Denmark, you don't have a choice. You cannot choose between softwares. You can learn it by your own at home, but they provide, for example, here, Autodesk license. In Hungary, where I'm from, it's Graphisoft, of course. I know in Germany, I don't know how about in Austria, but in Germany they also use Graphisoft.
Many of them, many use it.
Austria,
in central,
same.
Many Central Europe, Graphisoft is also very dominant. Now it's bought by Namestcheck, but again, the big companies are playing the game, and it becomes kind of monopoly game now. If you if you do your own business, it doesn't matter whatever you use. You can just do your work, and then
you just have to deliver.
You have to deliver what they need. So the open source, I think there are many small companies using open source, or maybe cheaper software, let's say, than just Autodesk product. I don't know how this business will change, but if you do small project, it's totally fine. Family house renovation, maybe some small office or social housing, it's fine. But big companies, they have to catch big fish, so they have to survive, and for that, they need, I think, not just only open source, because of the requirements from client that they demand something else. So funny, but a lot of clients just asking, "Oh, I need Revit file, or I need ArchiCAD file," like that, in the contract. So there's nothing you can do.
And we don't know why.
We know why, but just it's manipulated by those big companies. It's a big manipulation in reality. It's never need to be like that, but it's manipulated. But I think in North Europe, they require more IFC format than just specific software format. So I think they are very ahead for this kind of direction.
Yes and no. They need both. They always want the native format as well.
Yeah, sure.
And here it comes that now the universities are using Autodesk products for more than a decade, and almost everyone who was not who was not using AutoCAD now it is using Revit. So there is a very, very small community of Graphisoft users here in North.
But
as I said, perhaps just the small firms.
But I see, Yeah, sure. But I see in the future, you know, that maybe it's different. I don't know in your study time now how it is like, but um, next generation they will learn more programming than actual software.
Yeah.
So in reality, also when you practice, they require more programming skill than just software skills because everyone knows that the limitation of software, but we need a developer to develop our own tool or own customize. Again, just it happens. Yeah. So
Yeah.
in the future, no matter what study or industry you work on, the most of young generation would be able to program at least one language, and I think this will change the industry dramatically in the future. Maybe it needs another 20 years, but I can see myself
Yeah.
now, newborn babies, they're looking at the mobile phone, and it's different culture now. And yeah, I'm expecting when we get really, like when I'm become maybe 60s, I think the software companies also somehow united some point, or it will be completely open source world where everyone develop their own tool to do it, and at the end everyone can deliver one simple format that every you know um, console requires probably.
Yeah, that's a very nice future
Mm.
if it will happen.
I think it will be like that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Park, for being here.
Yes.
I think I'm just gonna stop the
Yeah.
recording now.
Yeah.